Your not wisdom, your story does matter to the success of your business. On today's episode of Make It Click, I have with me writer, booster, speaker, and blind skier, Krista Jonick. Krista, thank you. And I was wondering, could you start with just helping us to understand why story is important for everybody? In speakers talked about each as, and many people might say, but I'm not a speaker. So why is story important?
Well, story is important because, let's face it, human beings have been telling stories around the campfire for, I don't know, thousands, millions of years. There's a reason for that. There are many reasons. And primary is that we use stories to connect with each other, to build trust, to boost that credibility factor in business. Without a story, when I meet someone and they just kind of share their successes and say, oh, I did this and I did this and I accomplished that, it feels a little empty because I don't know how they got to where they are. When I find out more about how someone has gotten to where they are, it feels more full of connection, full of ways to click with other people, full of ways to show the journey. I mean, because it's not like we're born, we don't pop out of the womb, successful adults. We have journeys. We grow, we learn, we make mistakes, we learn from those mistakes. And a lot of times, the nature of our journey actually shapes the lessons that we learned. So it's difficult, oftentimes, I find with myself and with my clients, to separate the journey from the lessons.
Well, tell us about your writer. You happen to be blind and you're but you were finding in your own business you were shying away, I think, using your own story.
Yes, I was, definitely.
And what made you realize that this was a missing piece for you?
Well, ultimately, I'll start with kind of why I shied away in the first place. And I think many people will find that they have this in common, that nobody wants to share the weaker or less desirable parts of themselves first. I found that when I walked into a room, when I went out there and networked, I was really afraid because I was concerned. I knew that people were going to see my cane and they would see the cane first and not me. So on the internet, I felt like, oh, well, my headshot doesn't show I'm blind. I don't have to tell people right away. They can see me first. They can see me and not the less desirable, quote unquote, or weaker, quote unquote, parts of me first, because we all want to make that wonderful professional first impression. At the same time, what I realized over time was that people are going to tell our stories whether we like it or not. People are going to have questions when they do find out about any kind of failure, weakness, undesirable part, disability, whatever it may be. People are going to have questions. If they feel comfortable enough, if they trust us enough, they're going to ask us. What better way to handle that than to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and to create stories, genuine stories that are fun to tell, that are interesting, and that help us show ourselves from a strengths-based perspective, that help us show ourselves overcoming, growing, learning, all of that. And the other side of it is too that just as much as I wanted to hide my story, a lot of people wanted to hear it. I was starting to get opportunities. I was starting to be asked to speak or to share my story in some way, shape, or form. Even if it wasn't always formal, it was a lot of people saying, yeah, you should tell your story. Oh, this should be part of your brand. Should. I resisted that, but eventually over time, I started to experiment with it. I started to try it out. I started to share, and I realized I did this turning points exercise. I was in a business of speaking workshop, and they gave everyone, we came up with our turning points in life. What I realized was that my turning points, many of my turning points in my life, also create the person I am today, create pave the way for my current journey. And one fun turning point that I share on a regular basis is that skiing, because that is something that I thought was impossible and I now know is possible, even for me.
Wow. So that's very, it was impossible. What about anybody else out there that has the things aren't possible? Something, is there, like, to suggest to our listeners, as you know, what's the first step to take to get past that? Because there's
Here's
something
what I've
waiting on the
learned.
other side of that door, isn't there? I mean, there's so many opportunities and people let stop them.
There very well may be something waiting at that behind the door. And until we open the door, even a smidgen to find out, we'll never know. This is what I learned. When you think something's impossible, find someone who's already done it. And once you find those people who've already done it, I have a talk that I give about the lessons that I learned from blind skiing. So I like to say, find the impossible people, make it like a superhero kind of thing. But the reality is that very often the people who are doing what we feel is impossible, they're not superheroes. They're just people who found a way, who found a path, who found or followed in the footsteps of someone who's an innovator.
Oh, very, very, very nice, Krista. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. It's so easy just to keep saying, no, I don't do that. No, I can't. I can't. I'm a person who's very concrete in this is how you do things. So even for me, Sherry was not easy. Learned myself, how it can benefit me, and that people do want to know I got where I am. It such a difference. And I just take that first step. Now, on how you can help them, how can they find that out?
Well, on my website, Wise Words That Matter, I share a bit about my story in my contacts, and I regularly post videos to LinkedIn and Facebook where they are inspirational and they're also educational about writing, about marketing, about storytelling, because I like to say that I'm in the credibility boosting industry. When we share those stories, they bring us closer to our prospects or our clients or just people that we're trying to get to know. That's my goal for clients. Just as I had to learn to share my turning points from a strengths-based perspective, share what I've overcome, share what I've learned, share what I've grown from, I also, well, clients tell me that I inspire them to do the same. So I'm at wisewords.thatmatter.com, as well as Wise Words That Matter on Facebook and Krista Janik on LinkedIn.
Well, and so inspiring for me. I skiing life, and it's like, yeah, no, not something. Go back to congratulations on overcoming any fears you might have had about skiing. Totally amazing. And thank you so much for being my day.
Absolutely. And feel free to ask me questions. Put some questions in the comments, folks. I will absolutely be there to answer them. I'm sure some of you have some skiing questions. There's a lot we didn't get to, and I would love to carry